For Kiddushin Daf Zayin, we're starting on Vav Amud Beis, the last line. Amarava, 10 money plone v'kadosh nilach m'gadeshes b'din arev. If a person says to someone else, give money to Ploni, and I will be, she says she says to the man, give money to Ploni to someone else, and I will become Mekudeshes to you. Mekudeshes b'din arev. She's Mekudeshes from the din of a guarantor. So a guarantor, you're guaranteeing a loan. Did you take the loan? No. So even though you didn't get anything out of it, you are obligating yourself to something. Even though she's not receiving anything because someone else is receiving it, but because she told you to give it to someone else, she is indebting herself for that money, and so it's as if you gave her something. Not that she received it, but she received it the same way an Arev has a responsibility for something that they didn't get. They have to guarantee the loan even though they didn't borrow it. So Rashi points out, because we saw yesterday that the man needs to say, or if the man doesn't say it, it's a suffix, the man needs to say Harei Mekudeshesli. So when he gave the money to the third party, he said, to the woman, he's Skachili, you're being Mekudeshes to me because I'm giving the money to this other person. 10 money leploni, hilach money be Skachili leploni. Take this money and you will be Mekudeshes to someone else. So Rashi points out that basically Ruvain appointed Shimon to be his shliach, to be Mekadesh Rivka. So Ruvain, though, didn't give Shimon any money. So it's Shimon's money, but he says, I'm giving you this money, you're going to be Mekudeshes to Ruvain with this money. So Mekudeshes begin Eved Kanani. So she is Mekudeshes to Ruvain, even though Ruvain didn't lose any money, because of the din of Eved Kanani. Eved Kanani, lav afagav delo kachaser v'lamidi kakani nafshe, even though he's not missing anything, he acquires himself. Rashi points out when an Eved Kanani, if other people pay the master for his freedom, he can't own anything because anything that he owns, his master owns. So other people pay the Eved on his behalf, and then he acquires his own independence. So he didn't spend anything, yet he's acquired. So Ruvain, even though Ruvain didn't spend the money for the Kiddushin, his agent Shimon did. He can become the Kiddushin works between Ruvain as the husband and Rivka as the woman. 10 money leploni v'kadashani lo. So now the woman says to Yosef, give the money to Binyamin, and I will be Mekudeshes to Binyamin. Mekudeshes b'din shneim. She's married to Binyamin through the combination of Arev and Eved Kanani. Arev alaf avagav lo kamati ana liyadeh. So she didn't receive anything. She asked Yosef to give the money to Binyamin. So that's the Arev part. And the person who is doing the Kiddushin, he's not even spending any money because he is receiving money, even because it was 10 money. So this other person, actually, this man received money, and he's Mekudeshes, and he's acquired a wife. So then the Gemara asks, me dummy, is it similar? Arev hai the kakanila kachaser mamon. In the case of a guarantor, the person or the first case of the guarantor, we said the person who's being acquired is losing money, meaning because Ruvain gave money to Shimon, and she's being Mekudeshes to Ruvain, the one who spent the money. Hai gavra kakani la lahayitza v'lo kachaser v'lamidi. But in this case, Yosef has spent the money, and she's being married to Binyamin. Binyamin didn't spend anything. So how does it work? So the Gemara says, because of the din of Eved Kanani, Binyamin can receive the money, or he can make a kinyan even though he's not out anything. He's not out any money, and he acquired, just like an Eved Kanani acquired himself here, Binyamin is acquiring Rivka as a wife. But it's not like Eved Kanani either. Hasam hach to kamakani kakani, hacha hayitza kamakanya nafsha. Velokakani love lomidi. But in the case of Eved Kanani, the kinyan is happening on the Eved Kanani, and he's gaining his own freedom. In this case, the person is acquiring an outside person, meaning the wife. So then, so then we use, it's like a mematzinu of a limud, but a mematzinu of arev yochech. Even though he doesn't receive any hana, he's indebting himself. So in this case, it's the woman who's indebting herself, even though she didn't receive anything. By Rava asked, Hilach mani vekadesh ani lacha. Here's money. The woman is giving money to the man, and she says, "I will be married to you." What's the din? So Amar Marzutra mishmei Rav Papa megudeshes. Marzutra said in the name of Rav Papa that she is married. So Amar le Rav Ashi the Marzutra and Kain Havile Nechasim Sheish LaMachrayos Niknim Nechasim She'en LaMachrayos Banen Ipchatana. So we learned yesterday that we basically, if the man gives and we need the man to give the Kiddushin and to make the statement in order for it to be Mekudeshes. Today, we're saying, right now, we're saying that there's cases, this question was, if the woman was giving, would it work through this Arev, Abkanani, et cetera, et cetera. So Rav Ashi says it shouldn't work because according to this, Nechasim Shesham Achrayas, property that has responsibility, that means real estate, can be acquired with movable goods. Nechasim Shesham Achrayas, because by acquiring the money, she's also acquiring a wife. And Rashi points out that humans are considered karka. And Tosos points out that who asks, it's not to say that regular people are karka, but it's saying it's about Eved, that an Eved is like karka. And then he says, okay, you could compare it anyway. There's a very important piece from the Gram, Rav Moshe Soloveitchik, the son of Reb Chaim, the father of Rav Aaron and Rav Yashaber. He says that even though there's a person and he says this klal in regard to an atzitz nakuf, if you're planting, a tree in a flower pot. So if the flower pot has a hole, it's considered connected to the ground. If it doesn't have a hole, it's not considered connected to the ground. There could be nafkaminas in regard to moving the flower pot on Shabbos. If it has a hole, you're harvesting because you're separating something that's going from the ground. If it doesn't have a hole, it might be okay. It also has potential things in regard to Shemitah and Yovel, or Shemitah, and in regard to Trumas and Maasros. So he's pointed out that even if a person is karka, but it doesn't mean he's like real estate, because real estate, besides for being karka, is also connected to the ground. A person is not connected to the ground. People walk away. I think in Gittin we talk about giving it to a woman's slave, but a slave can walk around. He's not a chatzar hamishtameres. A field, you know where the field is. The Eved isn't. So even though a person is karka, but a person is not mechuber. Besides for the difference between a karka and movable things, there's a difference between mechuber, connected to the ground, and talush, separated from the ground. Just because something's karka doesn't mean that it's mechuber, and the person would be the nafkamina. So Rav Ashi says if she gives him money and then he acquires her as a wife, that means that by him acquiring the money, which is a movable thing, he also acquires or he acquires her as a wife. So karka could be acquired along with money. But we learned the Mishnah later on in this parak. It says the opposite. If you're acquiring real estate, you can acquire movable goods along with it. That's called kinyan agav. And there seems to be two different kinyan agavs. One is when tziburin, if the movable goods are actually on the karka that you're acquiring, or are they in a different place. Rav Aaron discussed it in Sharon. It's also in Odis Rar Yosef, Benichai in a siman. He discusses the difference between those two kinyan agavs. But we learned that you can't acquire karka with money. Works the opposite. With acquiring real estate, you could acquire something movable. Amrle misaber to Amrla agav. When we said this halacha, that when she gives him money, she can become his wife. You think that works from kinyan agav? No, you're right. the Mishnah about Kinyan Agav, you acquire movable things with real estate, not the other way around. And here, in this case, the woman is similar. She's not real estate. But we're not talking about Kinyan Agav, because this doesn't work like Kinyan Agav. This is talking about where she gave the money to a very important person, because I guess it doesn't say it, but there's a pasuk in Mishlei, someone who hates gifts will live. There's a joke that some people who want gifts, they say that the proper conjugation, punctuation in the pasuk is Sona Matanos Yichya question mark, but that's not the pshat. It's good if you don't like gifts. So because he doesn't take gifts, from the fact that he will accept this money from her, it makes her feel very good. There's a lot of hana. So through that hana, that's what he's giving her that hana. So that's even though he didn't give her money, but the hana that he gave her is worth a significant amount of money. So so it's not that her giving the money is what caused the kinyan. It's the fact that he accepted the money. It made her feel very good that he accepted her gift, and that hana is like he gave her something, and that's the Kiddushin. And obviously, he had to say Harei Mekudeshes. Okay, we're about 6 lines up from where the lines get wide. Itmar Nami Mishmei de Rava. We also learn in the name of Rava, the same halacha works in regard to mamanos. If I give you money to acquire a field instead of for Kiddushin, it's tzricha, and we need to know the halacha of Kiddushin. Excuse me. Rashi says that the sugya of Rava learning Kiddushin from Medina Arev and Medina Evet Kanani also works in the case of mama. It's not talking about this last case, but just in general. I can give you, if Reuven tells Shimon, if Reuven tells Shimon, give money to Levi, and the field will be sold to you, not to the third person. So monetary transactions can also work from Din Arev and Din Evet Kanani. The tzricha, we need to know that it works for Kiddushin and it works for regular sales. The Yashmina Kiddushin Mishum Daha Itza Nichala Bachal Dehu Kidreish Lakish, Dam Reish Lakish, Tav Lamesan Tav Dum Lamesav Armalu. Because if we'd only know that Evet Kanani and Din Arev works for Kiddushin, I would say because a woman is willing to marry herself to get married, even though she's receiving nothing in this case, or just the benefit of someone listening to her, because Reish Lakish says it's better to be paired with someone else than to be single. Aval Mamona aim alo. But for Mamanos, I might think that no, you need to have someone giving money and someone receiving, and the other person receiving the money. So therefore, we need to know that it works for Mamanos for a regular monetary transaction also. V'yashmin and Mamona, and if we would know that Din Arev and Din Evet Kanani works in case of regular buying and selling things, I might think that that's only because you can forego. If someone owes you money, you can forgive it. But for Kiddushin, you might think that the woman can't. If someone said, "I'm going to give you $100 to be Mekudeshes," and then she forgives it. She says, "No, you don't have to pay me anything." It doesn't work. You might think it doesn't work, so we need Kanani or Arev to say that it will work for Kiddushin in these cases. 2 dots, the first wide line on Zayin Amar Aleph. Amar Rava said, "He's got to do lechatzi Mekudeshes." If he said, "Be married to half of me," she is Mekudeshes. Chatziach Mekudeshes li. But if the man says half of you will be Mekudeshes to me, ain't Mekudeshes. She's not married. Amar le'abai l'Rava, ma'ishna chatziach Mekudeshes li de'ena Mekudeshes. Abai asked Rava, why is it different that half of you is sanctified to me is not Mekudeshes? Why is it different when he says you are sanctified to half of me? Isha Amar Rachmanav lo chatzi Isha, just like the pasuk says, Ki kachish Isha, when a man takes a woman, just like you can't take half a woman, you need to take a full woman. Hachinami ish Amar Rachmanav lo chatzi ish. But the pasuk also says, Ki kach ish Isha, the full man should take the woman. So how come if he says half of me, you're Mekudeshes to half of me, he's married, but it's not a full man. So Amar Le, Rava replied, Hachi hashta, hasam itza lebei trei lo chazia. A woman can't be married to 2 people. She can't be married to 2 men. But a man can be married to 2 women. Obviously, this is talking about before the Cherem Rabbeinu Gershom. But since he could be married to more than one person, his whole body doesn't have to be Mekudeshes to one woman. So he could say, you, the whole of you is Mekudeshes to part of me. That's enough to be a marriage. And this is what he's telling her. He's saying you're married to half of me, meaning he's getting permission to marry another wife. So my Rabbi Rabbi Soloveitchik pointed out that if you look at the Targum in Rus, when Ploni Almoni says that I'm not able to do Yibam with Rus, Penashri says, he said that the Targum says, I'm already married and my wife is not going to let me marry another wife. So Rav pointed out, even before the Chirim Derbenu Gershom, when a man was allowed to marry more than one wife, he was not allowed to do it unless his first wife agreed. So it ends up that this line over here is he's asking her permission, or he's telling her, I'm going to marry you. I'm going to marry you as long as you let me marry another wife later on. Now, according to the Targum, is that enough? She might need to okay that particular woman. Meaning, if Rivka and Bilha won't get along, Rivka won't let his wife marry Bilha. But here she's saying, yes, you could potentially marry someone else, but according to this, he might still need to get permission to marry that particular woman. Amarle Marzutra Beit Rav Mari the Ravina. Marzutra asked, Mari said to Ravina, "V'nishu tele Kiddushin bekula." Even if he said half of you is mikudeshes, why don't we say that the part of her that's mikudeshes, it spreads to her whole body, and the whole of her, the entirety of her, becomes married to him? Milo Tani, didn't we learn in a brisa? Ha'omer ragla shelzu ola teikula ola. If he said this, the foot of this animal should be a korban ola, the whole animal would be an ola. And afilu man da omer ein kula ola, even according to the opinion that the entire animal is not a korban ola. That's if he only dedicated a part of the animal, which the soul, the life of the animal, is not found in that part. But if he would have dedicated or consecrated even a part of an animal, but the life of the animal is in that part of the anatomy, the entire animal was an ola. So there we see that if a very integral part of life of the animal is consecrated as a korban, this consecration spreads beyond that one part of the anatomy, and the whole animal is an ola. So too here for the woman, if he was mekadesh a part of her, I'll be mekadesh your head, or I'll be mekadesh your chest. That would, or maybe even a leg, possibly. If the neshama's tuluya in it, it should spread to her whole body. So the Gemara says, no, me dummy. You can't compare this being mekadesh half a woman to consecrating a leg of an animal. Hasan behema hachadas acheres. That's an animal, and here you have an independent person who can say no. So the animal doesn't have any independent das that it could reject what you're doing. The woman does, so it can't necessarily spread. So hello dami alaha. But if you want to ask to the following question: the Amar of Yochanan, behema shel shnei shutfin hikdish chetze v'chazer v'lakal hikdisha kedusha. If you had an animal that was owned by two partners, and then Reuven and Shimon, Reuven dedicated his part to the Beis Hamikdash. Then he bought out his partner Shimon, and then he sanctified the rest of the animal to the Beis Hamikdash. So it's sanctified, but you're not allowed to bring it as a korban. But also Tamura, if he makes a Tamura is an exchange. You're trying to transfer the Kedusha to another animal. So you're not supposed to, but if he did, the Kedusha does get transferred to the second animal, and the second animal is the same status that it's not allowed to be brought as a korban either. Shmamina tlas, and we learned three things from that halacha. Shmamina balachaim nidachem. We can see that a live thing can be pushed off. This live animal is not able to be brought as the Beis Hamikdash. Once it was partially not being able to brought as a korban because it was only half of it. The part that was owned by Reuben was dedicated, was consecrated to the Beis Hamikdash. The whole animal is not allowed to be brought. We know once it was initially not allowed to be brought as a Beis Hamikdash, it's permanently not allowed to be brought. And we also learn that even if something isn't consecrated itself, he didn't promise it as a korban. He only gave it as a donation to the Beis Hamikdash. So its value, we see that even something whose only its value was donated to the Beis Hamikdash, that can also be not possible to give it as a donation. So it's not just a korban can be not offerable, but even just the monetary value of this animal is not offerable to the Beis Hamikdash in this case. It could be pushed off. And we're on the third line, second line on Zion Beis now. So we only said here that the shaila of half of you being mekudeshes to me is similar to the halacha of being owned by two people, and the owner of one of the partners in the animal was makdish the animal. So we say that because the whole animal wasn't even dedicated, it wasn't even for a korban, just to be its value dedicated to the Beis Hamikdash. Once the entire animal wasn't brought to the Beis Hamikdash, so it was nidcha, was pushed off. So we're saying, so that's why the woman is not mikudeshes in this case either, it seems. By Rabbi, second line, chetzich b'chatzi pruta b'chatzi pruta mahu. If you say I'm mikudeshes, half of you for half a pruta, and the other half of you also for half a pruta. So altogether, he's mikadesh the whole woman for one pruta, which is the minimum according to Beis Hillel in our Mishnah. What's the halacha? Once he said chatzi pruta, is that considered an end of statement and it's not a kiddushin? And therefore, it doesn't matter that he says v'chatzi pruta and she's not mikudeshes. Or do we say that as long as he's talking, she's listening, and the two statements add up? And and if we say that the two statements continue and they do add up, what if he says half of you for a full pruta and half of you for a full pruta? What's the din? Once he said the word pruta, does that end the statement? And he wasn't mikadesh the whole woman; he was only mikadesh half the woman, which was the shaila of the previous, just the immediately previous question in the Gemara. But we started on the bottom of Zion. Amar Aleph at the two dots. Amar Rabbi Skachli Lachatzi. Excuse me. This Chatziech Mekudeshesli. If half of you is Mekudeshes to me, would that work or not? Odilma Kol Biyome Mono. Or if he says it on the same day, do they combine into one statement of I'm being Mekadesh the whole you for two prutas? Im Tim Salomer Kol Biyome Mono V'Holachu. And if we say that as long as you're keep coming back on the same day and adding to your previous statement, if he says, I'm being Mekadesh half of you for a full pruta today, and he says it today at the same time, I'm being Mekadesh the other half of you tomorrow for a pruta, does the fact that he's saying it tomorrow, does that stop his statement, and therefore it's not connected, and the whole of her is not being mekudesh to him, or not? Or is he saying my Kiddushin process with you is starting right now and it's going to continue? So is he saying that this process is going to continue? In which case, if she says yes, she is continuing, and the Kiddushin does work. Or if he says it at one time, the two halves of you for one pruta, what's the din? So he certainly said them both halves at the same time, and he gave her a pruta, which is the right amount. Or do we say a woman is not able to be mekudeshes partially at all? We could say Abaye gave a reason on the previous Amud about Isha, because Rahmana Balachati Isha. Teku, we don't know the answer to these questions. Two dots in the middle of Zayin Amud Beis. Boy Rava, Shteb Nosach Lishteb Banai Bepruta Mahu. So this case, so a man says to another man, I have two sons, Reuven and Shimon. They made me a shliach to be Mekadesh, and you have two daughters, or in this case, they were minor daughters or naros, so the father can still be Mekadesh them. I want, Reuven and Shimon will marry Rachel and Leah. And I guess he had to specify which one was for which, or else it would be a case of Suffolk. And because if one of them, because they're sisters, whatever, so he had to say which boy for which girl. But the problem is the whole sum of money was one pruta. Mahu basar nosin mekabel zinon ve'ika mamona. Do we say that in regard to the transaction taking place, you need a pruta? And in this transaction, there was a pruta. Odilma basar did hu azlinan v'haleka, or do we need a pruta for each woman? And there isn't, because it's a total of one pruta for two women. Teku. So we don't know the answer to this. Bayra Papa. Bitro parascha bepruta mahu. If he says, I want to marry your daughter and I also want to buy your animal for one pruta, what's the halacha? Mi'amrina bitcha b'chatzi pruta parascha b'chatzi pruta. Do we assume he's saying I'm paying half a pruta for your daughter and half a pruta for the cow? Or is he saying I'll give you a full pruta for your daughter, throw in your animal for the deal, and I'm not acquiring it with money, but I'm going to just acquire it with a regular kinyan, which I don't think you're able to be makabel an animal with a money, but you could agree to sell it for money, and then you have to do a kinyan anyway. Teku. We don't know if this worked for Kiddushin or not. Boy Rav Ashi, bitcha v'karkacha bepruta mahu. So similar, I want to marry your daughter and buy this piece of land from you for a pruta. Mahu, what's the halacha? Bitcha b'chatzi pruta v'karkacha b'chatzi pruta. Do we assume he's asking that to be Mekadosh daughter for half a pruta and the land for half a pruta, and therefore it's not Kiddushin? Odilma bitcha bepruta v'karka b'chazaka. Or is he asking him, I'm going to pay you a pruta for your daughter, and can you throw a karka in along with it? Take it. How gavra de ikdish b'shirai. There was a certain person who gave strips of cloth for Kiddushin, meaning he didn't use money, but he used something that was worth money. Rabbi Amar lo trichi shuma. Rabbi says that you don't need to evaluate the price and make sure that they're worth the pruta beforehand. And if she wanted them and took them, they were worth the pruta for her, and she's mukadeshes. Rav Yosef Amar trichi shuma. Rav Yosef says you need them to be evaluated by people who can appraise their value. If he said, I'd be mekadosh you with these pieces for whatever they're worth, everyone agrees that you don't need to appraise their. So if he gave it to her and said whatever it's worth, and she accepted it, everyone agrees that it's okay. But and if he said these are worth 5 zuz or whatever, or 5 prutos, and they weren't, what he said wasn't accurate, so that wouldn't be Kiddushin either. The machlokes between Rabbi and Rav Yosef is if he said they were worth 5 prutos and they were worth 5. Rabbi Amar lo trichi shuma dehavu shavu chamshin. They don't need to be appraised because they were. Rav Yosef Amar trichi shuma. Rav Yosef said they do need to be appraised to make sure that the value is accurate. What the husband says. Kevan deitza lo bekia b'shuma lo samchadaita. Maybe because she is not an expert in the appraisal values of these things, she didn't rely on his value and the way he evaluated them, and it's not okay. So we'll leave it here, 3 lines up from the bottom on Zayin Amud Beis.